Focus rituals are probably the single best thing that you can learn to develop if you need to focus intently on a task. And if you've ever seen Wolf of Wall Street, then you know exactly what a focus ritual is. That ritual that everybody does in the scene, pounding their hand to the chest while humming, is an actual focus ritual that Matthew McConaughey does. They saw him doing it in the middle of takes one day, and Leonardo DiCaprio came out and said, I think we can use this in the film, which they actually did. The reason that a focus ritual is so important is because of something called attention residue. And attention residue is an actual thing where, if you're focusing on task A and you suddenly switch over to task B, not all of your attention is going to go to task B right away. Some of it is still going to be stuck on task A, or it's going to be wandering on other things. It takes time before you're fully invested in the activity that you want to invest time in. And then there's also Dr. Don Green, who's considered the founder of performance psychology. He wrote a book in 2001 called Fight Your Fear and Win. And he talks about 7 skills that you need to perform well under pressure. And this is a book that can be used for actors, it could be used for athletes, it could also be used for businessmen. And one of the 7 key skills that he talks about is focus. Breaks it down into 4 main components: presence, intensity, duration, and mental quiet. If you're able to harness all 4 of these components, you're able to focus intently on the task at hand and do your best when it's needed. Which brings up another key point. If you need to do an activity right away, you can't just expect for motivation to suddenly come up, which will push you to do well in that activity. In CBT, we have a phrase for that. Action precedes motivation. You're not always going to be motivated, but when you have to do something when the time asks for it, you have to act on it, whether you feel like doing it or not. And the key thing that holds us back from doing that activity is because it's uncomfortable. Think about it this way. We could talk about doing an activity that's good for us the same way that we describe this ball, how it goes up and down in the air. There are 3 variables that control the movement of the ball. There's speed, which literally talks about just how fast the ball's going at any moment. Then there's velocity, which is talking about the speed, but it also includes the direction that it goes in, whether it's a positive velocity or a negative velocity. The same way that if you imagine yourself sitting in front of a TV, watching a TV episode, that activity itself can be a good or a bad activity. It could be a good activity if you're on a weekend trying to enjoy your time off, or it could be a bad activity if it's during a weeknight and you have a test tomorrow. The same way that the speed of the ball doesn't tell you if it's going in a positive direction or a negative direction, it just tells you how fast it's going. Now, let's say that you're watching your TV show, you look over to your desk and you see your homework assignment sitting on the desk, and you push yourself to get up and go over to the desk, as uncomfortable as that is. That is acceleration. The same way that if you're sitting in an airplane and it's taken off down the runway, it's got a positive acceleration before it takes off. You feel your weight sit back into the chair. And then just like this ball, when it goes up, it has a constant acceleration of gravity pulling down on it, a negative acceleration where it constantly pushes down on it and then it eventually turns around and changes direction. That's essentially what happens when we plan out our activities for the day, we feel really motivated, but then suddenly we just stop. And we decide to go and sit in front of the TV because it feels so good for us. That is the negative acceleration. So, how do we create this focus ritual? Well, going back to Dr. Don Green, he talks about the pre-event routine, which is essentially a focus ritual. And he talks about how this ritual has a lulling effect on the left brain into a quiet state, which is something that you need to do in order to focus intently on your task at hand. And to get there, you can use strong visual, auditory, or kinesthetic cues. So you can be listening to music, you could be listening to a chant, you could be focusing on a dot that you have on the wall, or you could be using textures. Some people have strips of sandpaper next to their desk, or they could be feeling velvet, or they could be rubbing their hands on their desks, whatever it is. The key is that it is the same ritual that you do every time that you need to sit down and do something at hand. It could take you a few minutes, but as you do it, it detaches you from the activity that you did prior. So, first key thing is that you find a designated space. Now, this could be the desk that you have, or it could be a corner in your bedroom. Whatever it is, something that you know it's study time whenever you sit down in this location. Ideally, it shouldn't be the same desk that you use to watch YouTube channels. Second thing is to prepare your tools. You can have everything that you need at hand, whether it be your laptop open, it could be having snacks next to you, a glass of water, just so you don't have to interrupt yourself to get up and get the items in the middle of your study session. Because every time you do that, you're now breaking your intense focus. And when you come back, You have to re-engage in that focus ritual in order to get back to the study method. Third step is to set the stage. Now you can light candles, you can light incense, you can change the lighting, whatever it is to change the scenery so that you get in the zone and you're not as distracted. So this also means removing anything that's distracting you, such as figurines on your desk. Fourth step is to prime your body and mind. This is when you can be listening to music, you could be closing your eyes and meditating for a few minutes. And when you do this, one of the things I do is I focus on my breath, because again, when you focus on the breath, you take your focus off the other things that are going on in your life. Fifth step that I would add in there is silencing the noise. And Dr. Don Green talks about this with a few of his clients in the book. And he talks about an opera singer that before they go on stage, what they do is they imagine themselves zipping into an egg. And even though they're not actually in a zipped egg, it's an imaginary cue to them that the noises they hear in the audience, the cellophane wrappers when they're unwrapping candy or something, or the coughs that they hear, don't matter. It doesn't get in their way. You can create a bubble around yourself, an imaginary bubble, or whatever you want. Step 6 is to signal your focus. After you do all of these activities, you're now ready to focus in on what you need to do. You can focus on a dot that's on a wall. You can open up your textbook and focus on the spine of the textbook, whatever it is, to really center your mind. And that's when it really starts to quiet. And all of the automatic thoughts that are coming into your head start to be related to the task at hand. And then 7 is you start, but start small. You don't have to jump into the activity right away. Do one small activity, then another, then another. If you're reviewing a chapter or you're starting to read a chapter for the first time, the first thing you can do is just read the session headings of the whole chapter. And then you can read the first sentence of each paragraph to get you an idea of what the chapter is going to talk about and the roadmap it's going to take you on. Then you can actually dive into the vocab and really start studying and cramming it. Focus rituals are good, they're very tough, but after you do it for a few times, you're gonna really love the fact that you can center yourself and get laser focused into whatever it is you need to be doing. So I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you have a focus routine that you do. I'd love to hear about it, and we'll see you next time. Take care.